Hello, everyone. Today we are continuing with our N4 topics, and we did some noun suffixes last week. We were talking about made, and this week we're going to talk about a few of the ones related to time. And so, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the VC Events channel. As we go on, you don't need to wait for me to stop talking. Just toss them out whenever you have them. But with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk, there's two, the first two we're going to talk about feel like they overlap a lot. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll feel that you have a better grasp on how they are, separate from one another. But the next two both have the same kanji. They both use the same kanji, which is this one. And you're going to see two versions of it. One is chu, one is ju. And they mean completely different things. And the tricky thing is that when you are seeing them in Japanese sentences, you'll see it typically written with the kanji. But you will get a better feel for which one it's referring to. It's referring to the chu version or the ju version, depending on what's going on in the sentence. Now, as you probably know, this it also is read as naka, and it means inside or middle, and that meaning directly applies to the two ways in which we use it. Specifically, we use it to talk about something. We're describing something going on during something else, in the middle of something else, inside of something else. And you consider these as suffixes, as we talked about, and you will usually see it in most often is after nouns. Some kind of noun that refers to a period of time. So it might be an event. And I don't mean event in the sense of a formal event. So, it might be class. It might be a test, a scan. It might be a talk. It might be on the phone. But all of these can refer to an action, a period of time, that's, it's during class, it's during a test, it's during a conversation, it's while someone's on the phone. It can also be used attached to actual words that, refer to time themselves. So you can say konshu chu, referring to sometime during this week. Now, here's the big thing. Here's the most important thing that we're going to talk about for the next 30 minutes is how to tell these two apart. And hopefully these lines will help you a bit. Basically, let's go to the example, this first example that we had up above, jugyo. And just quick question, for those of you that are students, how long is your typical class? How long is your typical class? First person that answers, I'm going to use their information. 6 hours. Okay, that's 6 hours. That's a long class. And then 4. I'm not sure. Does 4 mean hours or seconds or minutes? Okay, so we have apparently the length of classes has changed since I was in school. Hi, I'm gonna go. Okay, I'll go with 6 hours. I'll keep my promise. So we've got a class that's 6 hours long. We've got a class that's 6 hours long. And if you haven't died by the end of that class, then let's talk about the difference between these two phrases. So what is something that might happen during a class? Help me out. What's something that could happen during a class? Something that a student might do. Just like in the middle of class, sleep. Okay, that's one of the ones I was thinking of. Give me something that's kind of a shorter action. Like, what's something that might happen? Like in the middle of class, this happened. Oh my goodness. Answer questions. Yes. Sneeze. Okay. Anything else? Doing homework, I guess, if you finished your classwork. Um, you might also, I'm trying to think of ones that you will be most likely to use. Um, you might go to the restroom during class. Now, chew. Now look at the screen and notice how the little purple marker is pointing right at the middle. Now, chew does not mean, drop your pencil, sure. Chew does not mean middle, as in right there in the middle, as in 50% through. Chew means middle, as in somewhere between the beginning and the end. So, if we are saying jugyo chu, we are saying our line, our timeline, this is all of the class. And whatever comes after that, whatever comes after this little chunk of Japanese, refers to an action that happened somewhere in that class. It could happen. Oh, wait, that's not going to work. Let's try this. It could happen at the beginning of class, like that first question mark. It could, I'm trying to use Japanese spaces to. No, it's not working. Okay, sorry about that. Um, it it could happen at the beginning of class. So what was it? 6-hour class. Whatever comes next, and let's give an example. I was saying go to the restroom. I might say something like this. 授業中にトイレに行った. So during class, in the middle of class, I went to the bathroom. I went to the restroom. And so when did I go? So here's our 6 hours, our 6-hour class. This 授業中に, this could refer to 15 minutes in. It could be 2 hours and 15 minutes in. It could be almost at the end. Any of these, if these are like amount of time, any of these could be 中に. So 中に refers to something that happens inside of a longer event. You know, inside of this class, something happens. And that thing might be instantaneous. It might happen for 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but it's not as long as the class itself. It's a chunk of time out of that longer block. Ju, however, I feel like chu is closest as in the middle of or during. Ju is closer to throughout. And by that, I mean it happens for all of that time. So someone mentioned sleeping. So you might see this. You might see this. You might see 授業中に彼がずっと寝ていた. So throughout class, during class, he slept for the entire time. It wasn't he fell asleep in the middle of it and then woke up. It's wow, throughout that. So that is the key difference between these two usages. And often you can tell, depending on what comes after, whether or not this is something that is happening for a period during that or throughout the entire thing. And let me give you a few examples. So if that should be an O, I'm not sure why that says to there. あの人は授業中におやつを食べた。おやつを食べた。 So during class, he had some snacks. Sorry. During class, he had some snacks. He had some oyatsu. He didn't have it for the entirety of the class. It was just sometime during class. He's like, oh, screw this class. I'm having some gummy bears. And he grabs some gummy bears from his desk and has them. Similarly, if you say, your friend says, hey, what are you doing this week? And you say, well, sometime this week, during this week, I want to go see a movie. 今週中、映画を見に行きたいです。During the week, sometime in the week. Now, I don't think a movie exists that lasts 4 or 7 days, so you're not going for the full time. You're talking about sometime during that week going out to see that movie. So that is how you use chu. Now, there is a few other ways to use chu. Before we mention that need that comes after it, you don't need it. It's not explicitly required. You can see in these two sentences, one has it and one doesn't. That's up to you. Now, this one, it means the same thing, but it's used slightly differently. And what these refer to is, it again is showing an action that someone is in the middle of. An action is currently happening. And when you see the full sentence, it will make more sense. Denwachu refers to someone that's in the middle of a phone call. Testochu, it's someone that's taking a test. You can use it with verbs as well. You can have these verb stems and say kangaichu. So someone says, so are you actually going to move to Japan? Like, are you really moving there? And you're like, well, I'm thinking about it. I'm in the middle of thinking about it. Kangaichu. So in this sense, it's kind of like the teiru form, as in you are thinking about it. But it's less so that you're just saying I'm thinking, but you're specifying like I'm in the middle of thinking about it. Same with the last one, kairichu. That would be, referring to going home. It's like I'm on my way home. So someone calls you and they say, where are you? I'm on my way home. Kairichu. So let's take a look at some examples. And you can see how this is used. Now, these typically come up as nouns. It's describing a situation. It's describing, what you're currently doing. So, for example, let's say there's a Renshu office. There's not, but let's say there is. There's a Renshu office, and you walk into the office one day and you say, hi, I'd like to speak to Michael. And the secretary, is probably Call-chan says, sumimasen, ima denwa chū desu ka? Atode hanashimashou ka? So, I'm sorry. The page actually says I'm on the phone, but whether it's me answering or Call-chan answering, they say denwa chū. You're using that to describe the state. You're saying I'm on the phone right now. Can we speak after? Similarly, this is, for example, you're walking down the hallway in a classroom, and some kids are being loud, and you're the teacher walking nearby, and you're like, hey guys, quiet. That class over there, they're in the middle of a test. Don't talk. あのクラスはテスト中だから静かにしてください. Again, you can see it, and with these two, they're getting attached to des or da, because they're not actually actions in the sense of verbs. You're not saying, they are taking a test. You're saying they're in the middle of a test. Michael, is on the phone. or in the middle of a discussion. Let's look at a few more examples. Again, if someone asks you, hey, do you want to go to the party next week? Or are you going to join? What about this job? Are you going to take this job? You're still thinking about it. You say, ごめんなさい。まだ考え中です. Again, it can be used to describe, a situation. Sorry, I'm still thinking. I'm in the middle of thinking about it. Or this last one, this is more of a business situation. 本田さんは帰り中ですからちょっと待ってください. Honda-san they're on their way back. Please wait. And as I noted before, these are nouns. They're nouns, or better described, they're nouns, but they're descriptors, excuse me. They're describing the situation. Someone is in the middle of doing these things. So let's practice just a little bit. And this is a good way to decline things. Say, no, I can't do something because of this. So let's practice. Let's practice that. Let's say I ask all of you a question. And let's say it's, the weather is actually kind of nice outside. And so I ask you all, hey, 公園に行きませんか? 公園に行きませんか? And so I'm asking you if you'd like to go to the park. And you're not allowed to say yes. That wouldn't help you practice this. So please give me some reason for why you cannot go. Some reason for why you cannot go. So I'll give you a sample sentence. It might be something like this. 何々中ですから行けません. And you might say sorry, or you might say, how about next time? But let me know why can't you go? Come on, why aren't you going to the park? If it's just a noun, you just drop it in front of the in front of the chu. If it's a verb, you're going to use that verb stem in front of it. So one person is, they're studying. Sorry, I'm studying. I can't go. Let's see what else other people say. If you're doing homework, you probably wouldn't use this particular expression. The thing that you actually say is, 宿題をする, to do your homework. But in terms of this specific expression, you'd probably just go with 勉強, studying. 勉強中. I see a lot of other people typing. I'm looking forward to seeing why your other thing is more important than going to the park with me. If you're cooking, you could probably just say something like this. Ryori chu. I can't get that out of my mouth today. Ryori chu. And ryori it's not an event, but it's an activity. And you're in the middle of it. Now, if you use a verb, um, don't forget you use the stem, but it's one of those interesting expressions where you can't just throw any verb on front of it. Shokujichu works, yes. You could say shokujichu. Um, if you were sleeping, I mean, of course you're sleeping, so you couldn't answer. But you probably wouldn't use this particular expression. You would probably just say, I'm sleeping, so I can't go. But I can speak while I sleep. Aren't I amazing? Solji, I think you could just drop the verb because solji, with a lot of these suru verbs that you have, you can typically drop the suru altogether, and it works here. So you could just say sojichu to say you're working. Someone else said it earlier, but yeah, that's a really common one. It would just be shigotochu. And for people that have just joined, please make sure your mics are turned off. If it's a condition, you wouldn't use this expression. This is the middle of an activity, like that you are taking part in. And so if you were sick, you would just say something like, you know, 病気, which doesn't mean cold, it means more sick. So just 病気ですからいけません. And sadly, my Kao-chan with the question mark has fallen out of my frequent. Oh, there it is. There we go. But again, for this one, holding on to the English translation in the middle of should make it easier for you to decide if it's a term that can be used with this expression. So we usually don't say I'm in the middle of being sick. We just say I'm sick. You cannot. Well, wait, let me think. Let me think. Can you use the past tense? Um, I feel I cannot think of an explicit example now that works, but yeah, let's try a sentence. So let's say someone visited yesterday. Like I work at home, so for example, someone came to see my wife, and they were talking downstairs, but I'm up here busy, so I can't see them. And then yes, the next day someone says, "Hey, did you see so and so? I heard they went to your house." And you said, "Ah, well, yesterday 仕事中だったから会えなかった. I was in the middle of work, so I couldn't see them." And just in case you didn't know this, you probably do. But if you're inside of Renshu, you can search for this stuff. In the dictionary, over in the sentences section, you can search for fragments. And so I just put in chu datta, and it gives me tons of stuff. It might not necessarily be this specific chu, like the chu might be the back half of another word, but it does help. But good questions so far. All right, let's continue. We have one more thing. So that's a good question. That's actually a really good question. It's kind of outside the scope of this lesson, but let me back up and grab one of the sentences that someone used, and let's give you why. Here we go. So let's say I'm working, so I can't go. And I'm translating very literally. In this case, it happens to work out well. But the first sentence is I'm in the middle of work, so I can't go. The second one is more I'm in the middle of work, so I don't go, which is a bit of a strange disconnect because if you say I don't go, you're making a choice. It's like I choose to go or not go. And I would say you don't really have a choice in this situation because you're in work. You're working, so you can't go. You can't go even if you wanted to. You're working. But ikimasen has more of the feel of I'm choosing not to go, which doesn't quite work because you're in the middle of work. But even if that wasn't an issue, if you were turning someone down, it would sound like you're choosing. It's like, I could go with you, but I'm not going to. I have nothing to do. I'm free, but no, I'm not going. The ikemasen is the potential. So you're saying, I cannot go. So it's like, I'm sorry, I've got work, I can't go. Okay, let's continue. We have one more. This is a less common grammar expression, but it fits in so well with these other two that we're going to talk about today. And this one is, if you can see it, it's goto. Again, this is a suffix, and it refers to each or every. Now, that just by itself doesn't help you because there's lots of eaches and everys, and in English we cannot use goto for. But more specifically, it is being used to describe an interval, a period of time. And so let's take a look at these. It is often used with periods of time or periods of distance. And you'll see here, for example, the very first one is ichijikan goto. That doesn't mean 1 hour, that means every hour. Every 1 hour. So after each hour takes place, something happens. The second one says su kiro goto. And if you didn't know, quick little vocab lesson. Su is a suffix, not suffix, a prefix, which means few or some. So if you say su kiro, that means a few kilometers. If you say su nin, that means a few people. Su biki, I guess that one, su, you don't say that often. Su might be a few sheets of paper, for example. So it's not a specific number. It's like every few. So su kiro goto might, that might be referring to something, for example, those signs that you see on a highway. Like every few kilometers, it has a sign that tells you how much further it is until your destination or the next exit. The next one is not a period of time, but it refers to an event. And so that means each game. So each game or match, each game that happens, something else happens. And the last one refers to, again, it's an action, but this one is an actual noun. Each time I'm wrong, for example, each time I'm wrong, I write the word 1,000 times on a piece of paper. It's that kind of thing. So let's take a look at some examples. This one, hopefully you don't have to take medicine this often, but if you needed to take medicine every hour, you might say this. この薬を1時間ごと飲みます。And you'll notice that comparing the two sentences, the first one does not have a ni following goto. The second one does. It's optional. You get to choose whether or not you need that there. So again, this one, maybe it's a marathon. I was thinking highway, but Renshu's thinking marathon, every few kilometers. Let's take a break. 数キロごとに休みましょう。あのチームは試合ごとに上手になる。That team, every game, it's an interval. It might not be the exact same period of time, but it's this interval of games. Every game, that team gets better. Or you might say, every time I make a mistake, I want to practice even more. Each mistake I make just gives me even more motivation. It pushes me even more. And as I just said, you don't need the ni, but it can help if you want to put it in there. So to wrap everything up today, we talked about these two different things. And specifically with the comparison between chu and goto. Chu, I'm going to type this out. If we're talking about chu, they're both a period of time. But with chu, it's just this during the specific period of time, something happened. It might be during the test, I went to the restroom. And you're not making any presumption about what happens during other tests, or if there is even other tests. It's just during this test, I went to the bathroom. Goto, however, there's a regularity to it. There's this frequency. It's every 1 hour. It's every few kilometers. It's every time I go to school, I start crying or whatever. And that happened. I saw that happen to my son when he first started going to elementary school. It was his first few days of school. He's fine now. But every day when we would go there, right before I said goodbye, I'd walk with him to the school. His eyes would mist up a bit, and he'd either cry or he would get really close to crying, until he got used to it. But it was a regular thing until it stopped. So I would say in terms of frequency, you see chu very often, extremely often. Ju, not quite as much. And then goto, again, it's not particularly common, but it does come up and it's worth knowing. Either for your personal knowledge or, because you're going to see it pop up in descriptions and tests and whatnot. So again, today was a bit of a shorter lesson. I hope this helped out for you, and I'll leave it open for any questions about chu, ju, and goto before we end things up. But while I'm waiting for that, again, these will be available inside the Discord and on Renshu underneath resources. If you're inside the menu, go to resources and then Japanese lessons, and the videos are always available here once they're uploaded. But again, next week we will not have a lesson, but we will be picking up after that. So thank you so much.